Hello, it's Tom, and today we have a video looking at Marimo problems that you might come across when you are growing these plants. Now, I love Marimo, they're fantastic. I've been growing them for 4 or 5 years. I've run into my fair share of issues, so you're in good hands, and I'm here to help. All right, so Marimo, also known as moss balls. Now, I've done a care video already on this plant, best practice, how to look after that kind of stuff. If you're new to the plant and you're not sure what you should be doing, go and start at that video. This video is going to be for issues and problems you're going to come across as you are growing them. Try and point out and pinpoint where things have gone wrong and what you can do to fix them. Right, so the first one we're going to look at is brown parts or sections on the moss balls. Now this one is completely green, so I can't do this as a demonstration, but I'm sure I'll find some photos I took previously where you can see it happening. Now, what's the cause? Okay, so it's usually one of four causes. Usually it could be too much sun, so it's some sort of sun damage. It could also be caused by too little sun, too little light. Then the third issue that you could come across is just general dirt. Okay, they do need to be cleaned, they do need to be washed. Do you wash your moss balls every couple of weeks or every month or so? The answer is no. Again, it could just be accumulation of rubbish, basically. If you give it a good wash, it could come clean. And then the fourth reason that you may come across with this is simply that the temperatures are too warm. Okay, they like it cool, they like cool temperatures. If the temperatures are quite warm, if the water's warm over summer, parts of it can die off. They don't like it in a particularly hot location or hot temperatures. The next issue we're going to look at is white marks or scorching on the plant. They should be green all over, everywhere should be green. This is less common than the brown sections, but it does still happen, okay? So if there's scorching or white sections, there's usually two main causes, which is too much sun. So intense sunlight can, as you might imagine, scorch the green, so it goes completely white. It's unlikely, okay? It's more likely to go brown, but it could happen. Second reason, sometimes when moss balls aren't very well, a lot of suggestions on Reddit and online would generally suggest that you add some salt to try and perk them up. That can work, absolutely. But sometimes people do put a little bit too much in, or they just add salt all the time. The next topic we're going to cover now is the color of the moss balls or the Marimo. What color are they? They should be green, yes, but different shades of green can indicate the health of the plant. It's not necessarily a problem, okay? So don't be concerned if it's not this, but I do get asked these questions. My Marimo is a lot lighter than yours, or I have been asked previously, mine is really dark compared to yours. What is mine okay? The color of the green is basically an indication of the lighting level that it's receiving over a longer period of time. Now, in their native habitat, they're growing at the bottom of lakes. Okay, so they are shielded by a lot of water above them. And generally speaking, Marimo in their natural habitat are darker green. Okay, that's their natural color. They are dark because they have a lot of chloroplasts to trap more light in order for photosynthesis to occur. If the green is lighter, it means that there is more light hitting them. Now, in their natural habitat, again, that could occur in different scenarios. We won't get into that now, but it could happen. And especially in a home situation as well, they could definitely be getting more light than in their natural environment. And if they're getting more light, they don't need as many chloroplasts. They don't need to focus so much on photosynthesis because their light supply is ample. In those scenarios, it could go a lighter green. Right, Marimo does have a smell. When they're in their jar, clearly you cannot smell them. When they come out, you can definitely smell them. When you're washing them, you can definitely smell them. And you know what? I'm telling you, you should actually get your nose on it and have a good whiff because that would tell you a lot about the health of your plant. Marimo should smell like an earthy smell. It's a bit like, not like grass, but a bit like seaweed on the beach. It's distinctive. It might not necessarily be the most pleasant smell, but it's not offensive, okay? It's almost like an earthy smell. It's mossy like. It's quite unique, but at the same time it's familiar. It's very hard to describe, but it should smell like that. Or any combination of that kind of scenario is good. If you get them out and they smell bad and it's offensive and you're like, oof, and it doesn't smell good, then you've got problems. Now, the causes of, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it because it sounds horrible. Smelly Marimo, it just doesn't sound right. But the causes of that are usually one of the following. Okay, so it could be too much light over a long time, or even too little light. If the plant can't photosynthesize properly, then parts of it are going to die off. Either too much light could be burning parts off and killing parts, and it's going to rot. So you're kind of smelling a rotten smell. It's not great. Okay, and obviously never ever washing them as well for so really long periods of time where you haven't cleaned them. It's just going to accumulate, and it's just going to be worse when you do actually eventually get to do it. So do it as a routine maintenance. Why is my Marimo floating? And the answer to that is because one of these three possibilities. Okay, so the first one is you've just washed it, you've had it out, you've been rolling it within your fingers, all this stuff, which we will cover. I've covered it in the care video and I'll cover it a little bit in this, I'm sure, later on. If you've had it out, if you've had it out of the water, if you are messing around with it, then you are introducing air into the Marimo, okay? There's little microscopic air pockets that you're creating. You put it back into the water, they're probably going to float because there's air inside them. So the most likely reason is you've been handling them. If they're just floating randomly, and perhaps it's a few days later or a month later or something, and they're just randomly floating, then there's two possibilities. If it's during the daytime, then the reason is most likely photosynthesis. You have the plant in a nice bright location, possibly too bright, and there are bubbles forming as it's photosynthesizing, it's releasing gases as part of the chemical process, and they're attaching to the moss ball and they are lifting it up, making it float, because air is not as dense as water. Now, if it's happening at nighttime, then the plant is respiring. So it's breaking down the energy it's built during the day with light, and it is now consuming that energy. Again, that process will produce gas and floating can occur. You can knock it down with a little stick or something. Most of them will end up back on the bottom. So a basic part of the houseplant care is actually to change the water, all right? But you also need to sort of clean the Marimo as well. They need to have a quick wash, a quick clean every time. Ideally, you change the water. If you don't, they get dirty. So it's really, really important that when you do a water change, you also clean the Marimo. It's good for their health. It's good. It looks better. You just need to do it, okay? It's essential. It's part of the maintenance. Why it happens is just because they can't clean themselves in our homes, not naturally. There's nothing to help with that. So they need to be cleaned by you. So you listen to the last piece of my video about cleaning them and you run to the sink because you realize you've never ever cleaned your moss balls ever and they're stuck. You cannot get them out of the jar. Obviously this has got a lid on, all right? That's not what I'm trying to say here, but you take the lid off and the water comes out, but the Marimo is stuck. What's going on? They haven't grown usually. It's just because the neck is too small. That's most likely what's happened here. You've got to get them out. You can give them a really hard shake. It's quite a possibility they would just come out. You can also try and put a little stick in there or something and just press them down a little bit, just to make them a tiny bit flatter to get them out. Obviously, the solution here going forward is to find a bigger vessel, a bigger jar, a bigger container for them to be grown in. Most people will come across this at some point. I've had it personally myself and probably over half of my Marimo over the years. It does occur. Unfortunately, it does occur. Now, if you look at the plant, or if you're doing it when you're washing it, or it's out when you're handling it, you may notice crevices or cracks or splitting. It's quite commonly called cracking. It's no longer round. It's no longer a perfect ball. It's actually coming apart slightly. It ranges from a small amount to quite significant and almost collapsing and falling apart in your hand. So it could be any sort of on that scale, could be similar on that scale. Now, if it's only a small amount of cracking, if it's a small amount of damage, what you can do is rotate it in your fingers and just gently roll it back into the ball shape. The idea is that you try and knit it back together so it will grow ever so slightly and seal the splits basically. So a small, moderate amount of cracking, that would be the first port of call, and that's what I would recommend doing. If it doesn't work, okay, if it is cracking worse, if it doesn't resolve, you're down to pretty much the final option, which is to tie it together. It sounds really weird when I say that, and people might be thinking, what the hell? People do it, okay? You just use some cotton or string, and what you can do is you can just tie it together. Knot it around, just keep going round, round and round and round, and you tying it together into place. That will hold its ball shape because you basically tied it into position. What I've done in mine previously, I've used similar cotton, or just like what you would do to like a sewing kit sort of thing. You just use the cotton, and I try and use a color that's similar to the Marimo color. And over time, you can't see it. The Marimo will grow back over that string. You can leave it in place. You don't need to take it away, and it will grow. But they don't grow fast. Okay, these plants are quite slow growing, so this is not going to be a quick fix. So try and use. If you use a color that doesn't stand out, you'll notice it. You'll notice it less, and it'll be less intrusive. Marimo is actually a type of algae. However, it's quite common for other types of algae to grow in the vase where the Marimo is, and they grow faster. Okay, they will take over and they can grow on the Marimo and they can grow on the jar. Now, there are usually three factors that will contribute to algae growing. Okay, the first one is too much light. Certain types of algae love light and they need it so much. And if you give it to them, they're going to grow fast and they will quickly take over, quickly colonize and quickly take over the space. The second thing is usually too much nutrients. If you're feeding your Marimo more than a couple of times a year, it's probably too much. High nutrients are just not required for these plants, but other algae will love it and they will consume it, and again, they'll take over. Okay. The third factor that usually gets into this is never changing the water or washing your Marimo. Those things need to be done on a reasonably regular basis, maybe a month, maybe slightly less, maybe slightly more, but you don't want to be leaving it too much longer than that. Condensation on the jar is more of an environmental concern, but it is also a really good indication that the health of the plant may not be ideal in terms of where you're growing it. That's a sign that there's too much light. Okay, that's an early warning sign. You're going to end up with lots of other issues later on, which we've covered in this entire video. Too much light is the main reason for problems, so you do need to be careful. Condensation is an early warning sign. If your Marimo is turning into mush, that's pretty much the worst thing that can ever happen in these plants. It looks like end game stuff if this is happening. End of the line sort of scenario. Unfortunately, it is most likely rotting, basically. Earlier in my video, I said when you get your Marimo out, you should give it a smell, you should smell its health. Basically, that's what you're doing. Again, you should feel its health as well. Okay, so they should feel firm, but not mushy or soft. There should be a little bit of give to them. They do give a little bit. Think of it like a tennis ball. That's how I would describe it, but obviously on a much smaller scale. And that's how it should feel pretty much all the time. If it's not feeling like that, if it's going really soft and mushy and it's falling apart in your hand, it's rotting. Okay, it's not great. If most of it's rotting, it might be a case of just taking it apart and seeing if there's any parts of it that are salvageable, any parts that are still firm, and you can just make them into tiny, tiny little Marimo, and you might be able to get away with that. But it's not good, okay? And as to the reasons why that might be happening, it's just the care hasn't been correct, okay? If that's the case, I would recommend going back to my video that I mentioned right at the start of this video, which is about care, general maintenance, how you should look after them. Go to that, link in the description, and start again, basically, with a new one. And best of luck. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it, and I will see you in my next one.